Hey there, welcome back to another video on my channel. Tell me, where are you watching this from?
The call came on a Tuesday. I was standing at the kitchen island, chopping onions for a bolognese that would never taste like my mother's, when my phone lit up with Claire's name. I wiped my hands on my apron, the one with the faded cherries my husband Mark had bought me at a farmer's market in Vermont 3 summers ago, and answered with the casual warmth of a woman who still believed her life belonged to her. She was crying. Not the theatrical, breathless sobbing Claire had perfected in childhood, but a hollow, mechanical weeping, like a faucet left dripping in an empty house. She'd been fired. Not laid off, not downsized, fired. For personality conflicts, which was corporate speak for Claire's particular brand of charm, the smile that arrived a half-second too late, the compliments that felt like invoices. "I have nothing, Kate," she whispered. "I have $400 and a car that smells like old fries." I looked around my kitchen. The sub-zero refrigerator Mark had insisted we needed. The marble countertops I'd chosen after 6 months of Pinterest boards and sample tiles. The window above the sink that framed our backyard like a painting. Maple trees. A wooden swing set our daughter had outgrown, but I couldn't bear to remove. The stone path I'd laid myself one feverish weekend in May. "Come here," I said. "Stay as long as you need." I was 36. I had a husband who still reached for me in the dark. A daughter, Emma, who was 11 and beginning to smell like deodorant and secrets. A job in pharmaceutical marketing that bored me enough to feel like stability. I had room. I had enough. What I didn't have was the imagination to see what I was inviting in. Claire arrived that Friday with 2 suitcases and a smile so grateful it made my teeth ache. She was 33, 2 years younger, but she'd always carried herself with the brittle energy of the perpetually overlooked. In childhood, she'd been the one who studied harder, dressed neater, laughed louder at our father's jokes, and still watched our mother's attention slide past her like water off glass. I'd been the effortless one, the lucky one, the one who got the scholarship, the prom date, the husband, the house. I hadn't stolen these things. I'd simply collected them, the way some people collect shells on a beach, casually, without malice, never noticing the tide going out behind someone else. "I'll stay 6 weeks," she promised, hugging me in the doorway. She smelled like the vanilla body spray she'd worn since high school, and something else. Something chemical and new, like a hospital corridor. "Just until I get back on my feet. You won't even know I'm here." She was wrong about the timeline. She was wrong about everything. For the first month, she was a ghost with good manners. She made her bed, the guest bed, I reminded myself, in the guest room, before 9. She washed her coffee mug. She asked permission to use the dryer. She sat at the dinner table with her hands folded, complimenting my cooking with a fervor that made Mark shift uncomfortably in his chair. "You're being too hard on her," I told him one night, after we'd climbed into bed and he'd turned his back to me, staring at the wall. "She's trying. She's studying us," he murmured into his pillow. I laughed. I actually laughed. "She's my sister, Mark. She's not a spy." He didn't answer. I should have noticed that he didn't answer. The changes began in the second month. Small. Almost invisible. I came home from work one Thursday and found Claire wearing my navy cardigan. The one with the pearl button I'd sewn back on myself after it popped at Emma's piano recital. "That's mine," I said, hanging my keys on the hook by the door. She looked down at herself, feigning surprise with a skill that should have alerted me. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I was cold and it was right there on the chair." She began to unbutton it, her fingers moving slowly. "I can wash it for you." "No, it's fine." I forced a smile. "Keep it. It looks better on you anyway." I was lying. It didn't look better on her. It looked wrong. The sleeves too short, the shoulders too narrow, the color draining her complexion to a shade of institutional gray. But I let it go. I let everything go. That was my first mistake, though I wouldn't know to call it that until much later. By the third month, she was cooking. Not just cooking, recreating. She found my mother's recipe box in the basement, the one I'd stored after the funeral, labeled in my mother's slanted, impatient handwriting. Sunday gravy, potato kugel, honey cake. Claire made the honey cake first. I walked into the kitchen on a Saturday morning and the smell hit me like a physical blow, warm, amber, impossibly specific. My mother's kitchen. My mother's hands. My mother's voice saying, "Kate, don't stir it too much. You'll kill the bubbles." "Where did you get that recipe?" My voice sounded strange, distant. Claire was standing at the stove wearing my apron now, the cherry one. She didn't turn around. "I found the box downstairs. I hope you don't mind. I just wanted to feel close to her." She turned then, and her eyes were wet. Sincere. Or something that looked so much like sincerity that my heart twisted in my chest, confused and tender. "It's beautiful," I said. "Thank you." Mark ate 3 slices at dinner. Emma asked why Aunt Claire's cake tasted more like Grandma's than mine did. I laughed. I always laughed. I was the woman who laughed, who smoothed things over, who made everyone comfortable. It was my talent, my curse, the architecture of my personality. I didn't know how to stop. The 4th month was when I started to lose objects. Not lose, misplace. That was the word I used, rolling it around my tongue like a pebble, smooth and harmless. My favorite lipstick, Nude Ambition, a shade I'd worn for 5 years, appeared in Claire's bathroom tote. My reading glasses, which I kept in the drawer beside my bed, turned up on the kitchen counter. A photograph of Mark and me at the Cape, the one I kept in a silver frame on the hallway table, was moved 3 inches to the left. Then replaced entirely by a photo of Claire and Emma at the zoo, Claire's arm draped around my daughter's shoulders with a proprietary ease that made my stomach clench. "Did you move this?" I asked her, holding the frame. She was folding laundry, my laundry, though she'd taken over the chore so smoothly I'd barely noticed the transition. She looked up, her expression blank, patient, faintly concerned. "Move what, honey?" "Honey?" She'd started calling me that in the 3rd month. A joke at first, she claimed. "You're like the big sister I never had," she'd said. Though I was her big sister. Though the word made no sense. But it stuck. It slid into our conversations like a splinter, small and sharp and impossible to remove without bleeding. "The picture," I said, "of Mark and me." She blinked. "Oh, Emma must have knocked it over when she ran past. I just put it back." "Was it the wrong one?" "I'm so sorry, Kate. My memory's been terrible lately. Stress, I guess." She took the frame from my hands. Her fingers were cold. Her nails were painted the same color as mine, ballet slippers, a pink so pale it was almost white. I hadn't noticed her painting them. I hadn't noticed a lot of things. That night, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and looked at myself. Really looked. I was 36, but I looked older. The skin beneath my eyes had taken on a bruised, translucent quality. My hair, which I'd always considered my best feature, thick, dark, with a natural wave, hung limp, unwashed for 3 days because Claire had started using my shampoo, and I kept forgetting to buy more. I touched my face. I touched the lines around my mouth. I tried to remember the last time Mark had looked at me the way he used to, with that specific combination of desire and amusement, like I was a book he couldn't wait to finish and start again. I couldn't remember. The 5th month, I found the first recording. It was accidental. I was looking for my phone charger which had vanished from my nightstand, and I opened Claire's desk drawer in the guest room, our guest room, though it no longer felt temporary, no longer felt like it belonged to visitors. The charger was there, tangled with a pair of my own earrings and a hair tie I recognized, but beneath them was a digital voice recorder, small and black, the kind journalists used in movies. I picked it up. My hands were shaking. I told myself it was nothing, a work thing, a habit from her old job. I pressed play, the room filled with my own voice, thin, tired. Talking to Mark about Emma's grades, about the leak in the upstairs bathroom, about whether we could afford to replace the Honda's transmission. Our voices, our private conversations, recorded from somewhere close, from the vent between her room and ours maybe, from a device planted under our bed. I sat on the edge of the guest bed, the bed she'd made that morning, with hospital corners so sharp they could draw blood, and I listened to myself sound small, sound defeated, sound like a woman who was already half gone. Then I heard Claire's voice, layered beneath the recording, a whisper so quiet I almost missed it. Day 47. Subject remains unaware. Attachment to husband stable but eroding. Daughter showing preference shift. Timeline on track. I stopped breathing. I should have confronted her. I should have screamed, thrown her out, called the police. I should have done what any sane woman would do, what the Kate of 6 months ago would have done without hesitation. Instead, I put the recorder back. I closed the drawer. I walked downstairs and smiled at Claire, who was wearing my yoga pants and my college sweatshirt, stirring a pot of my mother's Sunday gravy. "Smells amazing," I said. "Family recipe," she replied, not looking up. "Some things just belong in the right hands." That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed beside Mark, who was snoring softly, and I stared at the ceiling. I thought about my sister's life, the apartment she'd lost, the jobs she'd been fired from, the men who'd dated her for 6 months and then vanished, leaving no explanation, no forwarding address. I thought about our mother's funeral, 5 years ago, when Claire had stood by the casket and arranged the roses with such precision, such ownership, that the funeral director had asked if she was the deceased's daughter. "I am," Claire had said. "I'm the only one who really knew her." I'd been too grief-stricken to hear the strangeness in that statement. Now, in the dark, it rang like a bell. I waited 3 days. I watched her. I watched myself. I watched the way she moved through my house, our house, she called it now, casually, in conversation with the mailman, with the neighbor's gardener, with Emma's teacher at pickup. I watched her answer the phone with my inflections, my pauses, my laugh. I watched her make Mark's coffee exactly the way he liked it. 2 sugars and a splash of oat milk, though I'd never told her how he took it. I was a ghost in my own home, a redundant organ, a woman whose presence had become an inconvenience, an obstacle, a problem to be solved. On the 4th day, I found her phone. She'd left it on the kitchen counter while she showered, my shower, the master bath, because the guest shower had stopped working 3 weeks ago, and she'd never called a plumber. Her passcode was Emma's birthday. Of course it was. She'd memorized it from the calendar on the fridge, the one with Emma's soccer schedule and Mark's dental appointment, and my own fading handwriting, growing smaller and smaller as the months progressed. I opened her photos first. There were thousands. Selfies in my bathroom mirror, wearing my clothes. Videos of her cooking in my kitchen, narrating the steps in a voice that sounded eerily like mine. And then, Mark. Dozens of photos of Mark. Sleeping in our bed, working at his desk, standing in the backyard, unaware, his face soft and vulnerable in the morning light. My hands were steady. I was proud of that. My hands were steady when I opened the folder labeled Project Replacement. It was a spreadsheet, a calendar, a manifesto. Phase 1. Integration. Months 1, 2. Establish trust. Assume domestic duties. Study subjects' routines, speech patterns, relationship dynamics. Phase 2. Displacement. Months 3, 4. Introduce subtle changes. Rearrange personal items. Adopt subject style. Record private conversations. Begin emotional distancing between subject and husband. Phase 3. Erosion. Months 5, 6. Intensify mimicry. Replace subject in family rituals. Create dependency in child. Document subject's psychological deterioration. Phase 4. Replacement. Month 7. Subject will break. Remove subject from home. Assume full identity. Marry Mark. Raise Emma. Inherit house, assets, life. Beneath the spreadsheet was a journal. Entries dated, precise, written in Claire's neat, joyless handwriting. May the 3rd. Kate forgot her own anniversary. Mark noticed. He said nothing, but his face closed like a fist. May 17th. Emma asked me to braid her hair. She said I do it gentler than Mommy. I recorded this. June 1st. Wore Kate's blue dress to dinner. Mark said I looked fresh. He was looking at my chest when he said it. I noted the duration of eye contact. 4.2 seconds. June 14th. Kate found the recorder. I saw her face when she closed the drawer. She said nothing. She is weaker than I projected. Timeline may accelerate. June 20th. Projected breakdown date. July 15th. By then, she will be medicated, isolated, or institutionalized. I will be ready. I closed the phone. I set it back on the counter exactly where she'd left it, angled toward the stove. I walked to the window and looked out at my backyard. The maple trees. The swing set. The stone path I'd laid with my own hands. My knees bruised. My back aching. Mark bringing me lemonade and kissing the sweat from my neck. I felt nothing. Not fear. Not rage. Not grief. I felt clear. I had 6 weeks. She thought I would break by July 15th. She thought she knew me, my patterns, my weaknesses, my pathetic need to be liked, to avoid conflict, to smooth the sharp edges of the world until they couldn't cut anyone, until they couldn't cut me. She was wrong. She had studied the old Kate, the Kate who laughed, the Kate who said, "Keep it. It looks better on you." The Kate who had been raised to believe that love meant giving away pieces of yourself until there was nothing left but a smile and a vacuum. That Kate was gone. I wasn't sure when she'd died, maybe in the guest room, listening to my own voice made small by recording. Maybe in the kitchen, watching my sister wear my mother's recipes like a skin. Maybe years ago, in a childhood I was only now beginning to understand, but she was gone. And in her place was something harder, something patient, something that had been waiting in the dark of my chest for 36 years, breathing shallowly, biding its time. I didn't confront Claire. I didn't throw her out. I didn't call Mark or a lawyer or the police. I began to build. The first trap was the schedule. I'd always been predictable. Up at 6:30, gym Tuesday and Thursday, grocery shopping Saturday morning, book club third Wednesday. Claire knew my schedule better than I did. She'd built her phases around it, her entries full of observations about my rigid adherence to routine and how it made me easy to anticipate and replace. So I stopped adhering. I went to the gym on Monday. I came home at 3 p.m. on a Wednesday, silent as smoke, and stood in the hallway listening to her talk to Emma in my voice, using my phrases, my mannerisms. I took a new job, freelance consulting, work from home, and set up an office in the basement, a space Claire never entered because she claimed the stairs aggravated her bad knee, a knee that had never been injured in any way I could recall. I watched her from the shadows. I watched her confusion when I wasn't where I was supposed to be. I watched her check her phone, check her notes, check the calendar she'd built around my destruction. I watched her make mistakes. The second trap was the notes. I started leaving them around the house. Small, intimate, written in a handwriting I disguised, looped, masculine, nothing like my own. I left one in Mark's coat pocket. Can't stop thinking about Saturday. You tasted like bourbon and trouble. Destroy this. I left one tucked into my own jewelry box, where I knew Claire snooped. She suspects nothing. Keep playing the game. Soon she'll be gone, and we'll have everything. I left one in the glove compartment of my car, which Claire had started driving because her anxiety made parallel parking impossible. The daughter is almost ready. She asked me yesterday if I could be her new mommy. Progress. They were fiction. Every word. Mark was faithful, boringly, reliably faithful. A man who still wore the same brand of underwear he'd worn in college. Emma was confused, but not lost. Not yet. But Claire didn't know that. Claire only knew what she found, what she stole, what she pieced together from her recordings and her observations and her own ravenous imagination. I watched her find the first note. I was in the basement, the door cracked. My eye pressed to the gap. She pulled it from Mark's coat with trembling fingers. Her face went white, then red, then a color I can only describe as hungry. She read it 3 times. She folded it carefully and put it in her own pocket. She didn't confront Mark. She didn't confront me. She kept it. She added it to her collection, her evidence, her fantasy of a world where she was the desired one, the chosen one, the woman men risked everything for. The third trap was the dinner. I planned it for a Saturday in July, 3 days before her projected breakdown date. I told her I wanted to celebrate her new job search, her recovery, her strength. I invited Mark's parents who were visiting from Florida. I invited Emma's best friend and her parents, neighbors we'd known for years. I cooked my mother's Sunday gravy myself, for the first time in months, standing at the stove in my own kitchen, wearing my own apron, my hair washed and pinned, my hands steady. Claire was restless. She'd been finding my notes for weeks now, notes in Mark's gym bag, notes in my planner, notes slipped into library books she borrowed from my shelf. She'd started watching Mark with a new intensity, a predator's patience. She'd started wearing more makeup, my makeup, applying it with the careful precision of a woman preparing for an audition. She thought she was close. She thought the final phase was beginning. I set the table with my grandmother's china. I lit candles. I poured wine, expensive wine, Mark's favorite vintage, a bottle we'd been saving. And I placed, at Claire's seat, a cream-colored envelope with her name written on the front in that same disguised handwriting. She saw it the moment she sat down. Her eyes lit up. She thought it was from him. From Mark. The culmination of their secret romance. The proof she'd been collecting. The key to the kingdom. "Oh," she said, her voice breathy, theatrical. "What's this?" I smiled. "A letter. It was on the porch. I think it's for you." The table fell silent. Mark's mother asked about the gravy recipe. Emma chattered about her soccer game. But Claire's attention was singular, absolute, a beam of light focused through a magnifying glass. She opened the envelope. She pulled out the letter, 3 pages, written in that same looping masculine hand. I'd spent 3 nights drafting it. Every word was a hook. Every sentence was a noose. She began to read aloud. She couldn't help herself. She'd always been a performer, my sister. She'd always needed an audience. "My darling Claire," she read, her voice trembling with triumph. I can't wait any longer. She's falling apart exactly as you predicted. The pills in her coffee are working. She's forgetting things, losing things, crying at breakfast. Soon she'll be gone, either to a hospital or somewhere more permanent. You were right about everything. You're smarter than her, warmer than her, more of a mother to Emma than she ever was. I've loved you since the night you wore her blue dress. I want you in my bed, in her bed, in our life. Tell me when to act. I'm ready. I'm yours. Mark. The table was silent, utterly silent. Mark's fork clattered against his plate. What the hell? Claire looked up, her face radiant, her eyes wet with victory. I didn't know he felt. I mean, we tried to hide it for Kate's sake, but then she saw me. I was smiling. Not the old smile. Not the accommodating, smoothing, please don't be uncomfortable smile. A real smile. A smile with teeth and weight and history behind it. Keep reading, I said softly. There's more. She looked down at the paper. Her eyes moved. Her mouth moved. No sound came out. Because the next paragraph began, P.S. There is no affair. There are no pills. There is no plan. This letter was written by Kate, who has known about your project replacement for 6 weeks. She's been watching you watch her. She's been leaving you notes to see what you'd do. She's been changing her schedule so your calendar looks like the delusion it is. You're not a replacement, Claire. You're a photocopy of a woman who stopped existing the moment she decided to fight back. Happy birthday. Love, Kate. Claire's hands began to shake. The letter fluttered. She looked at Mark, who was staring at her with an expression I'd never seen before. Disgust, yes, but also pity. And something worse. Recognition. He was seeing her, finally, not as the helpful sister-in-law, not as the victim of bad luck, but as what she was. A parasite. A thief. A woman who had mistaken observation for intimacy, collection for love. She looked at Emma, who was shrinking back in her chair, her face pale. Aunt Claire? My daughter whispered. Why are you wearing Mommy's necklace? Claire's hand flew to her throat. The gold chain. The small diamond pendant Mark had given me on our 10th anniversary. She'd taken it from my jewelry box 3 days ago. I'd let her. I'd left the box unlocked, the note about the affair tucked beneath the velvet lining. I can explain, Claire stammered. Explain what? I asked. My voice was calm, pleasant, the voice of a woman discussing weather or grocery lists. Explain the recordings, the calendar, the photos of my sleeping husband. Explain why you've been wearing my clothes, cooking my recipes, telling my daughter that you're her real mother when you think I'm not listening. I stood up. I walked around the table. I stood behind her chair and leaned down, my mouth close to her ear. She smelled like vanilla and chemicals and desperation. You wanted to be me, I whispered, but you forgot the most important part. I was never the clothes. I was never the recipes. I was never the house or the husband or the calendar. I was the woman who built this. And you can't build, Claire. You can only copy. And copies fade. I straightened up. I looked at Mark, who was already standing, his face hard. I looked at my in-laws, at the neighbors, at Emma's wide, frightened eyes. Claire is leaving tonight, I announced. She won't be coming back. If anyone sees her near this house, this family, again, I have enough evidence to have her arrested for stalking, identity theft, and attempted poisoning. Yes, Claire, I had the coffee tested. The supplements you've been adding to my morning cup, they're not vitamins. She stood up so fast her chair tipped over. Her face was a mask of fury and ruin, the face of a child who'd broken a toy and now found herself holding nothing but shards. You bitch, she hissed. You pathetic, smug, lucky bitch. You've had everything. Everything. And you can't even see. You don't even deserve. Deserve what? I asked. A sister who loves me? A life I built with my own hands? You're right, Claire. I don't deserve you. I never did. Mark was already on the phone with the police. His father had moved to stand between Claire and Emma. The neighbors were murmuring, shocked, but I felt no shame, no embarrassment. This was my house, my table, my family, my life, which I had almost lost not to malice, but to my own softness, my own refusal to see cruelty because it wore a familiar face. Claire ran. She grabbed her purse, my purse, the leather tote I'd bought in Milan on a business trip, and fled through the front door, her heels cracking on the stone path I'd laid. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. The locks were changed. Her belongings were already packed in garbage bags in the garage. The police would find her at the motel on Route 9, the one she'd booked for Phase 4, using a credit card she'd stolen from my wallet. I sat back down. I picked up my wine. My hand was steady. Mom? Emma's voice was small, broken. Is Aunt Claire bad? I looked at my daughter. At her face, which was my face, which was my mother's face, which was the face of every woman in our line who had ever been told to be nice, to be quiet, to give and give and give until there was nothing left but a smile. No, baby, I said. She's just very lost. And sometimes, when people are lost, they try to take your map instead of finding their own way. Did she want to be you? I thought about that. I thought about Claire in my cardigan, in my apron, in my bed. I thought about the recordings, the calendar, the meticulous, joyless documentation of a life she wanted to inhabit but never understood. She wanted to wear my life, I said, but she didn't want to live it. There's a difference. Mark came back from the hallway. He sat beside me. He took my hand. His fingers were warm, rough, real. He didn't say anything. He just held on, and in that holding I felt the weight of months of distance, of confusion, of quiet resentment that Claire had seeded like weeds in a garden. We would talk later. We would rebuild. We would go to therapy, probably, and I would tell him about the notes I'd left, the traps I'd set, the woman I'd become in the basement shadows. He would need time to understand that the Kate he'd married, the easy, laughing, accommodating Kate, had been a necessary fiction, a survival strategy, and that the woman beside him now was harder, sharper, more real. But for now, he just held my hand. And that was enough. After dinner, after the police had come and gone, after Emma was asleep with her door locked, and the house alarm set for the first time in years, I walked into the guest room. Claire had left it neat. Of course she had. Hospital corners, the pillows fluffed, the recorder gone from the drawer, but I had already copied the files to 3 locations. The project replacement folder was evidence now. It would follow her. It would keep her away. On the desk, she'd left one thing behind. A photograph. Our mother, young and beautiful, holding 2 girls on a beach. Claire and me. We were maybe 6 and 8. We were smiling. We looked like sisters. We looked like a family. I turned the photograph over. On the back, in Claire's handwriting, was a date, 2 weeks from now, and a single word: retry. I laughed. I actually laughed, though it sounded different now, rougher, deeper, less afraid of its own echo. I tore the photograph in half, then in quarters. Then I flushed the pieces down the toilet and watched them swirl away, becoming nothing, becoming water and pulp and memory. I walked back to my bedroom. My husband was waiting. My bed was mine. My life was mine. And I was finally, fully, irrevocably awake.